Hi there, good afternoon, and welcome to the next in our talent series at People to People around taking the next step in your career. My name is Catherine Kennedy. I'm the Managing Director of People to People here in New South Wales. I'm very happy to be with you today and joined by my colleagues who you can see on screen there, who I'll introduce shortly. So before we go further, I do just want to acknowledge that I'm on the land of the Darug people today and pay my respects to elders past and present, and extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people everywhere. Thank you very much for joining us. This is, as I said, it's one of a series of talent webinars that we are hosting over the course of 2023. So hopefully it brings some value to you. The plan of attack for today is really to cover a couple of different areas. We're hoping to give you some insights around just what's happening particularly within the Sydney market. So I'll spend a little bit of time sharing some data and some information around what's happening in the labour market and in the economy, and then we're going to chat to each of the people on screen who've all got different things that they're going to share with us. So we'll speak firstly with Kalinda Campbell, and she's going to talk to us about job search strategies in the digital age, which is obviously very topical in the current period. Then we'll also talk to Katerina, and Kat's going to talk to us about job searching and networking and how you can do that effectively. And then last but certainly not least, we're going to have a chat to Aidan Boast, and Aidan is going to give us some ideas about preparing for your next job interview. So hopefully all of that's helpful for you. Thanks again for joining. We will have a Q&A at the end of the webinar today. So if you have questions that pop up for you as we're going along, please feel free to pop them in the chat, but we will hold the Q&A session at the end just to make sure that that we can get through all of the content and that it's not too disjointed for everybody. So that's the plan of attack. Thanks again for joining, and we might get into it with the Sydney market update. Okay, so that's our beautiful city that you can see there, the most beautiful city in the world, I would argue. I may be a little biased, but yeah, so I thought I'd give just a little bit of information and insights around the New South Wales market and particularly the Sydney market for you today. So just to set the frame, I thought I'd just give a little bit of context around the New South Wales economy, just to give, as I said, just a bit of a perspective and a framework for us to talk within. So before we get to the job vacancies, and I can just leave that on the screen, but just to let you know a little bit about the size and scale of the New South Wales economy. So New South Wales is the largest economy in Australia. That's probably unsurprising to you. It's valued, or the size of the economy is $500 billion, which is obviously a very significant amount. It accounts for a third of Australia's economic output and also is home to a third of Australians. So we really do live and work in the powerhouse of the Australian economy. And obviously Sydney, being the capital city, the most populous part of New South Wales, is where the majority of that economic activity is driven from. So that's just to give you a bit of perspective. What I thought I would do now is just give some insights and some data around the labour market generally, and then we can deep dive into a few things that are a little more specific to the Sydney market. So what's on screen just there, and this is data freely available from the ABS, gives a historical visual snapshot of what's been happening with job vacancies for over 40 years. So there's a thing called the Internet Vacancy Index, which basically measures month on month the number of jobs that are advertised in the market. And you can see there that the last couple of years, there has been absolutely extraordinary levels of activity happening in the jobs market. So from that COVID pandemic downturn, which everyone's well aware of, there was an absolutely, really steep, rise out of that period. And in 2022, we just saw extraordinary numbers of job activity. It has started to, what I would say, normalise. You can obviously see that there's a fairly steady downward trend there. So in August of 2023, which is the last data that we have, about 400,000 jobs were advertised in Australia. Now, that's down from the peak of nearly 500,000, but significantly higher than it has been at any other period in our history, really, except for that sort of period of a year or so coming out of the pandemic. So I just thought that gives a nice visual picture. What I've got on the next slide actually breaks it down by the different states. So it was very busy, this graph. So I've actually just included the three biggest states and economies, being New South Wales, Victoria and Queensland. New South Wales is that light blue line at the top, being the biggest state. Not surprising that we have the largest number of vacancies. But you can see it's been a little bit more of a bumpy ride for New South Wales from very, very, very high peaks in that 2022 period. There are, of course, some seasonal peaks and troughs around Christmas time and that sort of thing, but it's starting really to just, what I would say, normalize. So yes, there's a downward trend, but it's starting to flatten out after a relatively sharp downward trend in the sort of earlier part of 2023. So contrasted with Victoria, which seems to be having I guess, a more steady sort of decline, but they also had an incredibly rapid increase coming out of the pandemic period. And Queensland's been more steady. And actually, according to this data, there's a slight uptick in terms of hiring activity in Queensland. We might move now to the next slide, which my memory has that it's around the unemployment rate. So to give you, and you can see this visually there, but to give you some perspective around the New South Wales market, the unemployment rate in New South Wales as of August, which is the last data available, there's new unemployment data coming out this week actually, was at 3.6%. The Australian national unemployment rate is at 3.7. So New South Wales has a lower unemployment rate than the national average. New South Wales and Victoria are relatively similar, very low unemployment in ACT. And then you can see some of the states with higher unemployment, Queensland, the Territory, Northern Territory and Tasmania. But I thought that might just give a nice wider snapshot. We will see some data in a second that actually looks at the Sydney Metro unemployment rate, which I think is just interesting to get a sense of that. So if we jump to I'm not sure if it's the next slide or it might be the one after, but oh no, it's the one after. But this I think is interesting just to give a bit of a sense of what's happening in the jobs market in terms of people moving around. So what we need to see a lot of hiring activity. And if you're potentially looking for a new opportunity, it's not necessarily about new job creation. Of course, that's always good and that's a sign of a very strong economy. But if there is mobility and people are moving around, that creates opportunities. So if you're watching this and you are thinking, well, I'm looking for that new opportunity, I'm just not seeing many of those roles come up, this sort of data can be insightful. So this looks back to 2015. Now, this is across the country. I couldn't find the data that was specifically for Sydney, unfortunately. So I would suggest that there would be some some variances across the different cities. But this shows the percentage of people who changed jobs in the last 12 months. Basically, that's the metric. So in 2022, and then the data that's been captured in 2023, it's close between 9 and 10% of people are actually moving around and changing positions, and there's that mobility in the economy. That's from a very low point in 2021 where it was really close to 7%, and then you can see the trend over the last 6 or 7 years was sort of between 7 or 8%. So it's interesting that this data is showing that 2022 and 2023 are fairly similar, although this data is not 100% to the minute. Obviously, they capture the data historically. So what we're seeing, I guess, anecdotally and just in the front line in the jobs market is that there is a little bit less movement that's happening. There's obviously some different things out there in the wider macroeconomic landscape that's making people feel a little bit nervous. And so we're finding that it can be a little bit more difficult to encourage somebody to consider a move into a new opportunity. And that has a flow-on effect to jobs being advertised because people are not necessarily moving around with the same confidence that they would have done it in an absolutely peak booming market. So I think it will be interesting when the next set of these numbers are captured. I would be surprised if that mobility number doesn't come down a little bit, but there's been higher than average job mobility over the last couple of years in Australia for sure. The next slide actually gives some data around the unemployment rate specifically, so it's got New South Wales, but then specifically within what's called Sydney East Metro. So Sydney East Metro is Sydney CBD, all of the kind of inner rim of the city fringe. I think it captures North Sydney as well. So really where there is huge sort of commercial hubs for Sydney. And you can see that the unemployment rate, particularly more recently, is lower than the state unemployment rate. So it's followed a fairly similar kind of line over the last couple of years. There's been a couple of months where it's crossed over, but in August of this year, the unemployment rate for Sydney East Metro was close to 3%, just above 3%, I think, versus the New South Wales unemployment rate of 3.6. So that's quite telling, I think, around the type of work that's available in the capital cities and in the major commercial hubs. And one of the slides we'll go to in a moment actually shows the biggest employers, so the industries that employ the greatest percentage of people. And it's quite different for Sydney East Metro versus the wider kind of New South Wales state. So I'm not an economist, of course. I can't say with conviction exactly what the reasons for that are, but I would suspect that it's because there's some highly skilled sorts of roles that are required within cities. There's definitely still a labour shortage in certain pockets, and sometimes in the more regional areas, we don't have as many of those specialised skills and specialised roles. So yeah, I thought that was interesting to see that if you're looking for work within Australia, Sydney East Metro, the sort of CBD of Sydney, would have one of the lowest unemployment rates in all of the country. So that is encouraging news, I think, if you're someone who's looking for a new position. If we jump to the next slide, the next two slides actually show the largest employing industries. So this slide here shows Sydney East Metro. So these are the largest industries in terms of employment numbers within Sydney. And unsurprisingly, really, professional, scientific and technical services employ the most people within Sydney. So in as of August 2023, 15% of the labour market within Sydney City or Sydney City and surrounds is employed in the professional, scientific and technical services space. So that's a pretty broad industry in terms of how the government categorises that, but anything within professional services, obviously those very technical, highly skilled, scientific sorts of positions, technology sorts of roles, they would all sit within that particular group, and that is the highest employer. So once again, as a candidate or as a job seeker, and if you're thinking where might you direct your job search, obviously you need to think about what kind of work you enjoy, what your skill set is, all of those things. But if you're thinking about what industry sector you might want to direct your search towards, professional, scientific and technical services is likely to have work available within the Sydney City. Then it's healthcare and social assistance. That is pretty consistent across the country, actually. But aging workforce, obviously everybody needs medical and healthcare. Then construction, then retail, and then accommodation and food services. I think it's interesting that in 2023, retail has dialed back a little bit from 2022, whereas accommodation and food services has actually come forward a little bit. So once again, I'm not an economist, but you might suspect that people are tightening their belts a little bit in terms of retail spend, but people still want to have experiences, and so people still might go out and have a bite to eat or go and have a weekend or whatever the case may be. So that slide is contrasted with the next one, which is actually across the state. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see that for all of New South Wales, healthcare and social assistance is by far the biggest employer. Then retail, then construction, and then that professional, scientific and technical services, which was right at the top of the list within Sydney City, is in the 4th place. And then education and training. I was surprised that was in number 5, actually. I thought that might be a little bit higher. So more broadly across the New South Wales market, that's the largest industries in terms of the employee, I guess the percentage of the workforce. But within Sydney CBD, it tends to be that professional services, technical and scientific space, and that probably correlates to the fact that there's lots of corporate types of positions within Sydney and Sydney CBD. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of a snapshot. There's so much information and data that could be shared when trying to give this sort of information. So please, if there are questions that people have had as we go through, please pop them into the chat there, or I'm very happy for people to reach out to me directly. If there's something you just wanted to ask or some insights that you were interested in, please feel free to do that. All my details are on the screen there. But we might move ahead now and we might have a chat to the first of our experts who's joining us today, and that is Kalinda. So we're going to talk to Kalinda Campbell. She's going to have a chat to us about job search strategies in a digital age.
Thanks for that intro, Kath. Really appreciate it. And that was some really good insights into the current market, definitely. So I'll talk about a little bit to do with the digital age and how to alter or some factual insights about how this has changed looking for a new job in this new day and age. I'd like to start by talking about social media. So professional social media is very, very important. Connecting with like-minded professionals in particular, so building that professional network, connecting with people on social media platforms such as LinkedIn in your desired field, colleagues, industry leaders, all of those sorts of things, and remembering that it's not just about the quantity of people, it's about the quality. So these connections can potentially lead to job opportunities or collaborations in the future as well. Using LinkedIn as a job search tool is very, very important as well. It has been used primarily for job seekers and recruiters in the recent day and age because it is quite cost effective compared to traditional job boards like Seek. So I would encourage all candidates to actively follow companies that you are interested in and even set up job alerts to stay updated on those new opportunities too. Showcasing your achievements on LinkedIn, so actively maintaining your LinkedIn profile and making sure that your work experience, new skills, and even recommendations from former employers are all showcased on your profile is very important. Sharing industry insights. It may seem a little bit silly when you go onto LinkedIn and you see that everyone is just posting all of these things about what's going on in the field, but employers really value that. They really do like to see that candidates are engaging in conversations and sharing these valuable insights with their network as well. This all sort of boils down to maintaining your online reputation. So we all know that employers very, very frequently conduct a quick Google search of any prospective talent that they are going to bring on board. So taking steps to address any of this negative online content that may be associated when you do Google your name. This can involve requesting removal of inappropriate content or even working on a strategy to push more positive information to the top of search results. So ensuring that LinkedIn profile is quite professional is definitely beneficial. Next, I want to talk about remote working and setting some realistic expectations as well. The impact of the digital age has obviously had a big effect on remote work opportunities, but while it has become more prevalent and flexible, it's important for candidates to be very realistic and real about the extent of these fully remote opportunities as such. Most companies still value a little bit of in-office presence for at least part of that time. Full-time remote work is definitely rare, and it is typically reserved for specific roles or circumstances as well. I did want to remind people of the benefits and challenges of remote work. So benefits may include you're obviously getting that really increased flexibility. I did see someone on LinkedIn post about how much money they've saved due to less money spending on commutes and also time as well. Challenges though, the feeling of isolation, distractions at home, and the need for self-discipline and time management, big factors that need to be considered there too. So in that regard, a lot of companies are encouraging people to come back into the office to foster that collaboration and manage the isolation as well. Next, I do want to talk about artificial intelligence in hiring and understanding the role in this digital age. So AI is very frequently used for resume screening. They can quickly scan and assess resumes for keywords, qualifications, and relevant experience as well. So it is important to be aware of this, and tailoring your resume to align with job descriptions is one really good way to stand out in those digital screenings. Also, though, you do want to remember that the human element is crucial in hiring. It is really good to provide a tailored cover letter or response to application questions to stand out in the digital application process, because you do need to remember that a hiring manager or a recruiter will review those applications, conduct the interviews, and ultimately make those final decisions as well. Let's talk about virtual interviews next. So we do always say to most of our candidates that at least one in-person interview is really important when you are going for a prospective role. It not only helps yourself familiarize yourself with the office location and surroundings, but also provides a unique opportunity for face-to-face interaction as well. So it does give that opportunity to make a strong impression, showcase your personality, connect with potential future colleagues, and meeting in person can also help you get a better understanding of the workplace culture. So while virtual interviews are very convenient and allow some level of detachment, you do need to remember that once you are hired, you will still be interacting with co-workers and clients in that physical office. So definitely remain authentic, aim to be yourself, and don't project a different image of yourself when you're doing a virtual interview, because you will ultimately be in person at one stage. Next, let's talk about a little bit to do with cybersecurity, and protecting yourself from job-related scams, which is a very big issue that has come up recently. There is a rising level of scams in the digital age, particularly in the context of job searches. You do need to take vigilance and caution when looking on the online job market. So definitely know how to identify fake job advertisements and websites. So they may ask to collect personal information, sensitive data, banking details, and always make sure you verify if you are a little bit unsure as to whether the job advertised is fake or not. Research the company's websites, contact details, and online presence. If you are really, really uncertain, I've had a few people who have just gone out to the company themselves and just given them a visit and said, look, I've seen this job online. I wanted to just make sure and verify that this is real, and I don't want to provide any data until I know that it is. So just be very cautious in that regard in the digital age as well. Next, I want to talk about company research. So really leveraging that digital age for some in-depth insight into what's going on in those sorts of companies that you're looking into. We need to know that there is, of course, an abundant or a wealth of information online that allows you to perform thorough research on potential employers. It's really easy to access company information, reviews, and even news. So before interviews, always thoroughly research companies of interest, do a deep dive into the website, their mission, values, all of those sorts of things, and definitely look on their reviews as well through websites like Glassdoor as well. I do talk to candidates frequently. I actually recruit in the legal market about groups on LinkedIn. So there's a group for law firms called Lawyers Weekly. It's a very valuable resource on LinkedIn whereby you can get all of the updated news, including mergers that are happening, what's going on with particular firms, and it may give you some really good insight that you can bring into an interview for you as well. So definitely do some research as to what groups you may be able to join. I do quickly want to go through some video interview tips. So making sure that you are technically prepared. So internet connection, computer, camera are all in a good working condition. Test the virtual link. Very, very important to avoid any last minute technical difficulties, and treat it like it's an in-person interview. Find a quiet, well-lit space, minimize background noise, dress professionally, have that eye contact and body language, and make sure you're familiar with the platform that you're using. If you do have any technical issues, make sure you have a backup plan. So have a phone number you can contact if you experience problems, and remain calm and professional as well. Finally, I just want to talk about the job application process. So making sure that you tailor your approach for success. As it does say on the slide, don't, as we say, stick and flick your resume. You don't want to just be sending out CVs to every single job that you see. We know that there's a lot more ways that you can be applying to jobs, like Seek has a mobile app now. While they make it easier to apply, it's not advisable to just apply to every single available role. They often lead to less success when you do mass apply to roles. So that's why it's very important to have that well-crafted and tailored cover letter, and have customized job alerts set up as well. So there is an ultimate need for adaptability in this digital age. But if you did have any sorts of questions, or you're looking for your next opportunity in Sydney, I'm happy to discuss with you. My contact details will be on the screen as well.
That's great. Thank you. Thanks, Carl. Lots of things to think about. I think the key takeaway for me is there's all these tools available that make things much easier, but obviously there's a human element as well. So it's just making sure that you get that balance there as well. I can see that there's questions coming through. So thank you to the people who are watching and asking questions. We'll get to them 100%. We'll just park it until the end. So thank you for joining us, Carl. We might move on now, and we're going to speak now to Katarina, also from our Sydney team. Katarina is going to talk to us about strategies for effective job searching and networking as well.
Thanks, Kath, for the intro. So essentially today I would have the pleasure of discussing the topic around the ever-evolving landscape of professional development, specifically around how to effectively search for jobs and, of course, most importantly, networking. We're in a world where opportunities are coming and going constantly, and there's an emphasis around, things being steady and just embarking on the journey towards your development and, of course, to your success of finding a new role. So let's begin. This just starts off with, of course, your resume. So most importantly, this is the main tool that will help you get the role. So you really need to, take some time into thinking about your personal brand and, emphasizing on what you can bring to the board to a prospective employer. When you're looking at taking the next step in your career, it's important to tailor your resume to what your experience is and what you've done previously or currently at the moment. Adding in as many examples of if you've used specific systems, what you've done on a day-to-day basis. Of course, I'm in legal support recruitment, so if you have worked across a specific area of law or if you've supported a specific individual, make sure you include that. The more detail you have, the better it will help you. Yes, there might be that stigma of, having a 2-page resume and that's it, but only include roles or duties and responsibilities that you feel like would be most relevant for this opportunity. This would also lead to having a look at the job advertisement. Make reference to what's listed in the job. If something's listed on there and you've done that previously or you have experience across it, include that in your resume, because that's where people like recruiters or talent acquisition or HR or whoever the person is that's in that hiring position, they'll be making that reference too. So it's important to include that because that's where they're going to be making that comparison. Structure of your resume is also a big thing. So I always strongly recommend having your dates of employment and where you've worked in reverse chronological order. So making sure that your most recent position is at the top, because that will be the most the most relevant position that you'd be applying for moving forward. And also using metrics and achievements in order to illustrate your past duties. But most importantly, keep it concise, straightforward, and if you feel like that information is relevant and it's listed on the job advertisement, include it. So secondly, this is really coming down to, the information that you are putting online. So over to the next slide, and quite similarly to what Kalinda has mentioned previously, LinkedIn is a very important tool for not only increasing the reach of your resume, but most importantly, and more than ever before, hiring managers are now likely to review your LinkedIn profile instead of asking for a cover letter. On LinkedIn, use the About section to present professional professional summary about yourself, showcasing a quick snapshot about what you've done, what you can bring to the board, and everything in between. Social media is a tool that, you know, can position yourself virtually, and you can surround yourself by prospective employers. So take the time to refine your connections, target hiring managers in sectors or businesses that you would also like to learn or work within potentially. This is also a great way for you to find out exactly who's in the business, follow what they post. One little comment on LinkedIn or a like supporting what that business has posted is one step closer to you to connecting with them. You'll be surprised as to how many people that are in that hiring position look at who's liked on people's posts or commented on LinkedIn to see that interaction, and that will also help you when you're going into an interview to bring up. Maybe you can mention that you've seen that they've posted something particular on LinkedIn that sparked your interest. That's always a great thing to have and to add on. And also, most importantly, set up job alerts for positions that are of interest to you in specific industries and sectors. Search engines like Seek, Indeed, and LinkedIn have this capacity for you to do so. This brings me to the next slide, and the next point is all around professional development and upskilling. So when you're looking to take the next step in your career, this may likely mean taking more responsibilities than you may want to initially cover or what you're currently doing in your position. But there's always ways to obtain this experience through internships and volunteering as well. This will also increase your professional network, which may also offer further opportunities and responsibilities for you to do in the future. Nowadays, there are multiple online education pathways for self-directed studies in order to gain relevant industry qualifications and experience as well. This also additionally shows your drive and commitment to your own growth to a prospective hiring manager. Moving on to my next point, which is, of course, building a stronger relationship with your recruiter based around honesty and transparency. On the next slide, it's just a quick snapshot of, you know, what we see as recruiters and what we would like when we're interacting with all candidates and employers. But most importantly, when you're partnering up with recruiter, I can't stress how important it is to be really transparent with everyone around your experience and your job search up to date. This is in order for you to overall improve the best service to both yourself and to us, and just allowing that accuracy to match your skill set to the best company as well. Recruiters review resumes and interview candidates every single day. So we can guide you on how to best present yourself when you're meeting a specific client, give you key insights into the businesses and exactly really what those people may ask or what they're looking for when they're hiring someone new. And almost near the end, but over to the next slide, let's shift our focus to networking. So I know this always sounds so daunting, and I know myself when I started in recruitment, I was quite nervous to network and to speak to all different people, but this is one tool that will help you when you're looking for a new opportunity and getting yourself out there. Internally, in your current position, speak up to your manager. Ask if there are any other opportunities available or anything else that can help you get to your career goal, and ask for advice for progression within the business. But also networking outside of the business, you know, researching and attending industry events, seminars on topics that are relevant to your field. Attending industry events, conferences, and seminars overall will help you with that. Join also professional organisation and alumni groups on different social media platforms. LinkedIn is very big with having specific groups, as Kalinda also mentioned, catered to industries or job types. I know definitely in legal, there are various groups out there. So join them, and this will help you network, meet new people, and gain further insight into these specific industries and roles. Lastly, practice, practice, and practice even more. Confidence comes with preparation, and the more confident you are in discussing your experience, the more then there will be more confidence when it comes to, meeting new people, and also when you're speaking with your new hiring manager, this is your time to shine. So it's imperative to reread your resume in preparation for an interview, but also practice breaking through your experience out loud. I know it sounds really obvious, but your tone of voice can really impact and how you come across when you are discussing certain things. So I know my best tip, and what I do give to some candidates, is maybe record yourself on your phone. There's a recording app, or you can use your video camera. Record that so you can hear how you're speaking. If you come across in a happy voice, that will really help you moving forward. And of course, most importantly, research and understand the company you're interviewing for. Make sure you make some keynotes, and just make sure you dress appropriately to your specific industry. You'll be surprised as to what some people wear to interviews nowadays. And even if it's virtual, put on a blazer, make sure you look presentable, because your first look is first best impression as well. So in this fast-paced world of job searching and networking, these strategies will help you moving forward. If you're looking for more career advice, or if you're in the hunt looking for a role based in legal industry, please feel free to connect in with me, and I'll be more than happy to help.
Great. Thank you, Kat. Lots of great tips there. I love how you get the plug in that if anyone's looking for legal work, then Katarina will be very happy to talk to you, I'm sure. The real takeaway from it, well, lots of takeaways, but I think that networking element, which can sound and can be daunting for people, but sometimes doing a bit of the online networking can make it easier to then take it into the, IRL world.
Yes, exactly.
So, I think that's definitely important. Thank you very much. So we might go now to our last segment, I guess, in terms of the insights and expert advice. So we're going to chat with Aidan Boast, and Aidan is going to talk to us about preparing for your next job interview. So we might go to Aidan now.
Yeah, I can hear you okay. Is that a bit better?
Thanks, Kath, and thanks for all the insights so far with Kat and Cal's great details. So wanted to go through 3 short and simple tips for this section. The first section is going to be preparation for your next job interview. The second part will be interviewing and what to do there, and then third part will be post-interviewing. So jumping straight into the first part, so preparation. A few things I wanted to point out here. So make sure that you know what you're talking about. What I mean by that is doing your research, going onto the website. Kat and Cal both mentioned that doing your research is going to be a big advantage for you. Have a look through the job description. So if you've been sent a job description, make sure that you're analyzing the key points and pointing out what your strengths are in relation to that job description. And then any details which the recruiter can give to you, get that. The more information you know, the more loaded you are, the better. So that would be my first tip. In terms of timing, so especially with people, you've got to imagine as well, people get quite nervous on interviewing. So make sure that you do prep in terms of timing, to if you're going on site, making sure that you're turning up there at a good time. If you're planning out a route, I've had candidates who have done the drive there before just to make sure that they get in there all okay. Don't be late. If you are, obviously call the recruiter and let the recruiter know, but don't be early as well. That's a really important tip. So make sure that you're only announcing yourself 5 minutes before the interview. If you turn up too early, you're going to panic the interviewer. They're going to be rushed to come and see you, and the interview's not going to start very well. So it's an important tip. In terms of gearing, so I've written gearing here, and there's different phrases which you can use, but at People to People, we like to prep our candidates on how to interview. So make sure that you spend some time with your recruiter, and if your recruiter is not doing it, ask them to prep you for the interview. So take 5-10 minutes to have a conversation and have a call with that recruiter, and they can give you some insights, they can give you some tips and techniques. You might even be a C-level senior candidate and still have that conversation with the recruiter and learn something. So it's definitely worth making sure that you're well geared for your interview. And then appearance, I wanted to cover, make sure that you are well dressed for the interview. I'm not asking you to wear ball gowns and tuxedos, but You want to be presentable. I know some companies, they may be smart casual and may wear jeans and chinos, but I would still recommend go in a suit. You want to dress to impress, and first impressions count. So the first 5 seconds of meeting somebody, people make a judgment. So just keep that in mind for next time you're getting ready for your interview. On to the second stage, so the interview. So there's a lot to cover here, and I'm trying to condense it down into 3 different sections. But the first one is greeting the interviewer. So you need to make sure that when the interviewer is coming into the room, you're standing. First of all, you're shaking the interviewer's hand, and it's a firm handshake. Again, I mentioned about the 5-second rule of people judging you. You want it to be a good impression. So make sure that you're greeting the interviewer the right way. Sitting down, looking around, have your back turned, so they turned up unannounced is not the way to start an interview. The second point is, what do you know about us? So I mentioned earlier about doing your research. This is an important part. So you got to think, what does the interviewer want to get from this? They want to understand, have you done your research? They don't want you to lecture them on the company and everything about all the details of the business. They know, they work there. So they're asking you, have you used your initiative to do your research? So I would suggest 2 to 3 lines about what the company does maximum. Don't go over that. If you go over that, the interview is going to drag out. The interview is going to get bored. Like I said, they know what the company is about. They just want to know that you've used your initiative. When they asked about your strengths and weaknesses, make sure that you target towards the job you're applying for, and try and link it as much as you possibly can. And I will go in more detail with that within the next point. But SAO, so you see here, I haven't put too much context to it, but I will explain. It's competency-based questions: situation, action, and outcome. So you may get the typical question everybody asks is, tell me a time you dealt with a difficult customer. There can be a range of different competency-based questions, but you need to answer them in a structure, and we recommend SAO. You may have also heard of STAR method. So S is the situation, and a real-life situation of an example which you've had issues in before. A is the action of what you did. So and use first tense. What did you do in terms of overcoming that objection? And O is the outcome. So let's use the difficult customer. Give a real life example of a difficult customer, an action of what you did to overcome that objection, and what was the outcome? Was the customer happy? Strengths and weaknesses. So I did just touch over that. Link it to the job. Weaknesses are also an important one. You want to link that weakness to something which you're also working on and developing on. So let's use an example of I only focus on one particular area and I'm a perfectionist. It seems to be a big weakness for a lot of people. Then come back with, but these are the areas I'm trying to improve on in terms of not just focusing on one task of my role. So I'm setting a to-do list and I'm trying to diversify my work during the day. Don't talk about pay. So if you're working with a recruiter, the recruiter can negotiate on your behalf. We're here to make sure that you're at the market rate and you're getting a good salary benchmarked for your experience and the role. So try not to talk about pay and leave that down to the recruiter, because they would have had that conversation already. In terms of asking the interview questions, there's a lot, and I can share a lot with you if anybody has any particular points on this, by the way, in the whole slide. If you want to get any more information, then I can give you more context. But one question I want to recommend is, what is the most important thing you want me to do in my first few weeks in this organization? You can find out more about the role if they come back and you've worked in that space before. Let's say they said you're going to be doing a lot of data entry. Go back to them and say, I've actually done this in XYZ tasks before, so you're ticking more boxes for them. And it also gives you a bit of reassurance if they're describing to you what your first few weeks are going to look like. It's normally a really, really good sign. So a good question to ask is, what's the most important thing you want me to do in my first few weeks here? And then the post interview, so the wrap up. So I would recommend to finish up an interview same as I mentioned at the start, and greeting somebody. So firm handshake, thank them for their time, and tell them you look forward to hearing back from them. You can to ask them if they have any other questions you wanted to ask. And yeah, make sure that you finish on a positive and follow them steps. In terms of following up, so make sure that you are keeping in contact with the recruiter. We ask our candidates to call us straight after the interview to get first impressions of how they felt the interview went. And a good recruiter will always get back to you and follow up with how that went as well. But yeah, definitely give the recruiter a call. And then feedback. So obviously it's always important, and we know that's really important for interviewers to get feedback. We will provide feedback if we get the feedback. We always ask for feedback from our the businesses we work with as well. Most of them are fantastic and do give us some really, really good feedback. So we'll give that back to you, and we're giving it back to you so we can help you improve moving forward. So if it is negative feedback or an improvement part, don't take it personally. It's just part of the process for interviewing, and we can help you tailor you to make sure that you're nailing your interview in your next interview. So it's always an improvement feedback rather than a critique and criticism. If you're not dealing with a recruiter, it is a little bit harder for a few of these areas, like talking about pay and getting feedback as well is one we've always heard that if you're applying directly. So yeah, working with a recruiter can be in your benefit when you are trying to get feedback, because we can get that for you on your behalf. So yeah, as I mentioned earlier, there's so much context and so many different areas we can cover in terms of your next job interview. I share all of my tips and techniques on my social pages, but I do have all my contact details up on the screen now. If you want to have any more insights in terms of how to prepare for your next job interview, then feel free to reach out to me on the details provided.
Awesome. Great. Thank you, Aidan. Yeah, Aidan does have a series that he shares on LinkedIn with videos, specifically with little, going a bit more of a deep dive into some of this stuff. So definitely connect with him and yeah, you'll get some value out of that. So that really brings us to the end of the, I guess, the experts sharing their insights, but we did want to set aside some time now to have some Q&A. So I've seen there's been a number of questions that have come through as we've been going along. So we might move now to the Q&A section. Okay, so yeah, please feel free to, if you've got any additional questions, to pop them into the chat there. But I'm just going to have a look through and read out some of the questions that have come through. So we have one here from Olivia. So thank you for joining us, Olivia. And her question is that I've noticed a lot of emphasis on the healthcare industry that you mentioned. I think this was from when I was giving the overview about the industries. And her question is, what advice do you have for how professionals from other fields like finance can adapt their skills and strategies to move into these areas? So I'm happy to give my perspective, and then if you guys have anything to add, I would say that you don't necessarily need to change your the right language. If you have a particular skill set, so if you're in finance, for example, you could target healthcare industries, but still do a role that is relevant to your skill set. So you don't necessarily need to completely retrain to, I guess, direct your attention to an industry where there's a fair amount of employment activity or where there's, a growing kind of market. So that's one thing to consider, is just around the type of business that you're targeting, not necessarily doing a job that is a healthcare job, for example. Or if it is that you actually want to have a pivot and move into a different industry and retrain and do a different position, then it would really just be about making sure you do your research around what's required in terms of qualifications and if there's any certifications that are needed. And you obviously need to make that investment of your time to do that. So that would be my advice. Is there anything that you guys would add to that particularly? All good? Okay, so let's, I know there's a lot of questions that came through as you guys were talking. Let's have a look. So here's a question from Mia. It's around networking. So I might direct it to you, Kat or Cal, whoever. Maybe Kat, you could kick off. So the question is, I never really know where to start with networking, especially on LinkedIn. So what would be a good first step to build up?
Yeah, so My best recommendation and how I kind of started networking, jumping into a space where I've never worked in before is you just go on LinkedIn, you search and find specific companies that work in the industry that you want to step foot into. And on LinkedIn specifically, once you go and search the business that you found that is of interest to you, there's actually a people section there. And anyone that's on LinkedIn that has listed the name of this business under their job experience, they'll actually pop up in this section that's on their profile essentially, and you can filter it through to say for example, if you want to connect in, well, in the legal space, you want to connect in with all of the secretaries or all of the partners or lawyers. This is where you'll be able to find everyone that fits or is currently working or has previously worked in that business. The more people you connect in with, the greater chance you'll be able to network more often. So that would be probably my first step and guide. And I know that that's what I previously did, jumping into a recruiter role. I've come from a retail background, so no idea of anyone in this space. And that was the first thing that I did, was searched people to people on LinkedIn, clicked the people section, and I think I connected in with everyone there. And that's how I was able to connect in and network with everyone in the business.
Yeah. Great. I think that also then as you connect with people, then your network expands because
Yes.
they're connected to people. So it is really that starting point there. So I think what Kat said there is a place to start.
Exactly. And you'll also get recommendations in your My Network section on LinkedIn. So once you connect in with, say, for example, one secretary, you'll get recommendations of other secretaries or other HR people, accounting and finance staff members as well. So that will give you a greater chance to expand your network overall.
Great. Thanks, Kat. We might go to the next question, which I might direct to you, Aidan. So this is from Arav, and Arav said that here in the UK, I've had many short temp jobs rather than longer jobs. Would putting all of those short jobs on my CV and talking about them in my interview hurt my chances? So I guess, do you put them all, or how would you suggest they approach that?
Yeah, I would say put them all on. I think it would look worse if you had gaps in your resume. So putting them all on, I think, would be a big advantage. The one thing I like to see as well is, because your concerns are also, are they looking at me and thinking that I've moved around quite a lot in short periods of time? So if you put you could put it in brackets, or you could put it next to that role that it was a temporary position, then people will understand that people temp. I've got candidates who have temped for the whole career. So if you explain that they are temporary positions, I think you're actually going to increase your chances, and see it as a positive. Don't see it as negative. You have experienced, if you've temped a lot in different businesses, you've experienced a range of different industries, different cultures. So you actually have quite a lot of experience in that temp because you've temped. So I would definitely put it on your CV.
Great. Yeah, I think I'd reiterate that, Aidan, that there might be some systems experience or an industry experience that you've got some exposure to, and if you don't include those things, you might be overlooked, particularly if things like AI are doing some of the initial sort of, I guess, screening, and if you don't include that information, you might be overlooked. There's a couple more questions, so I'm just going to have a quick look through here to make sure that we're not missing anything. So bear with me. There's a quick question which I can answer briefly from Ava, asking if people-to-people hire from overseas. So I guess that if you have appropriate working rights, and some of our clients require particular, obviously you need to have valid working rights within Australia for us to be able to place you. But the answer is yes, just depending on what your experience and expertise is, if it matches what our clients are looking for. On a related matter, and I might direct this to you, Cal, and then if there's Aidan, you might also have some perspective. So question from Nuno is, do you see any market trends around sponsorship opportunities for international talent in Sydney, specifically in sales and marketing roles, was Nuno's question. But even broadly, do you see any trends around sponsorship?
I might leave this one for Aidan, but I will comment that I know an increasing number of, well, as you guys know, Kat and I are in the legal industry, but an increasing number of law firms are now becoming accredited sponsors because we are seeing that they want to maintain that talent that they do bring in for that short-term period, but they are really wanting them to stay. But Aidan will be able to expand.
Yeah, it's definitely an increase. We do find, and to be really transparent, we do find working with a recruitment agency, some companies tend not to spend on a recruitment fee and on sponsorship. So we do find that some companies would like to just do one or the other. But we have started to see businesses talking about sponsorship and the options to do that. We're also starting to see that as a solution for permanent positions in terms of working with our permanent team as well, where they're saying, hey, we would actually consider it. Do you have anybody who would be applicable for that? But you do obviously have to have the right skills, and you do have to have the right accreditations to be sponsored as well. So yeah, definitely worth checking. And look, if you're going to partner with people to people and agencies, it's worth asking that question.
Yeah, indeed. The only thing that I would add to that, well, just to reiterate what you said, Aidan, there are, depending on the sector that you're looking at, there are specific requirements for sponsorship. So, like, for example, in the recruitment industry, for us to be able to sponsor somebody, they have to meet certain experience and qualifications requirements. So the other thing that, and I don't know if this is an option available to you, but sometimes it can be easier to get that transition to sponsorship if you have been able to prove yourself for a little while first. So if you are able to work perhaps on a working holiday visa or in some other capacity, and then they see that you're great, and the business will say, hold on, we'd really like to hold on to this person, they're a bit more likely sometimes to then go down that sponsorship path as well. So yeah, it really does depend on the individual situations. I think we've probably got time for one more question, so I'll just have a quick look here. Just to find what else we've got here. So here's the last question from Naveen that's just popped in. So do you do one-on-one discussions with job seekers who have inquiries or need feedback on the job search strategies or interviews? So I suspect the question, Naveen, is sort of, do we provide that coaching? Look, it would be, we're very happy to have conversations with people who are interested to know what's happening in the market and want some general advice. Being fully transparent, if you have a background and a skill set that we just don't think would be applicable for the clients that we work with, then we'll be upfront with you about that, and we don't want to be wasting either party's time if there's just not going to be a match there. But giving just some general advice around your profile and how that might be best presented, and then particularly if you then start to engage in a process with one of our team, then as Aidan and I think everybody on the call said, we would certainly give you that preparation and coaching, and get, if there's feedback that comes back from interviews, how do we take that on board and improve for the next time? So that definitely happens. But if you're looking at a full kind of career coaching solution, there are also other organisations that just do that. So, but very happy to have an initial discussion. So I think that probably brings us close to the end. We'd set aside an hour and we are bang on time at 1:29. So thank you, Aidan, thank you, Kat, thank you, Cal, for joining, and thank you everybody for watching us today. All of our details are on the screen there, so if you would like to get some more information about the jobs that we've got advertised, jump on our website. We're all on social media. People to People has a big social presence across all of the different social channels as well. So thank you very much for watching and joining us today, and yeah, we'll say good afternoon. Thanks.